Hey YouTube family, I am back with another video, and man, this one, I thought it was a message that was just applicable for me, which is why I had that face. I thought it was just something that God had laid on my heart to encourage me and uplift me in the season that I am in, but it has been pretty evident the past couple of days here in America. It has been the election season, and on top of that, just I feel like for God's children, it's been a lot of heavy warfare and persecution that is occurring. And God just made it very apparent that I'm not the only one who needs to hear this. So I'm going to be speaking today from Exodus 14:14. And I really feel like this message needs to be titled, "You're not a victim, you're a threat." And that does not actually come from my own revelation. I actually heard it from a podcast I was listening to with Lisa Bevere. If you don't know who the Beveres are, I'm just going to take a moment and let you know. Don't miss out on your blessing. They have tons of podcasts, books, and free resources to get connected with their ministries and just the messages that God has given them. But that's a whole nother conversation. They are a blessing. So I would definitely recommend, if you have access to, well, just YouTube, internet, go look up Lisa Bevere and John Bevere and consume some of their content. Okay, so back to today's message. You are a victim. You are not a victim. You are a threat. And so, yeah, I'm just gonna read through Exodus chapter 14 to give myself a little bit of a refresher, but also just to um, get into today's message. So it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi Hiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord.' So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, 'What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services.' So he and his chariots made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots along with all of the other chariots of Egypt, with with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi-hahiroth, opposite of Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, 'Was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out to Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert.' Moses answered the people, 'Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still.' Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen.' Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them. Coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side. So neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at Egyptians' army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of the chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on the right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses his servant. Now, I don't know about you, but that was beautiful. Honestly, actually, I don't think that's the end of the chapter. Okay, it is the end of the chapter. That was beautiful. That was such a testimony in itself. It literally displayed how God got the glory in the end. But there's just a few points that I really wanted to point out. And let's just start off first at verse 4. It was pretty clear by this time. It says, "And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them." Constantly throughout this chapter, just this chapter, not even the whole journey, just this chapter to get to the other side, Pharaoh pursued the Israelites. The Egyptians pursued the Israelites. It was a pursuit, constant pursuit. But I want to really make note of the fact that God hardened Pharaoh's heart to have him pursue the Israelites. Meaning that God is orchestrating even your enemies' moves. God is sovereign over everything. He is in control over everything. And sometimes we can get so oppressed in our thinking, we can get so caught up and distracted and being afraid or being, whatever feelings that you may be caught up in. You may be anxious, you may be depressed, you may be feeling like, you're the only one in the world. You may be having these emotions. But I just want to remind you today that there is nothing that is happening to you that is too big for God to handle. And he had to remind me on Sunday, he had to remind me through the song that I love. I think it's by Corey Ashbury. It's called Reckless Love of God. Reckless Love. And it says, "There's no mountain you won't climb up. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down that's coming after me." I've sang this song so many times, and I've never heard that verse more intensely than I did that day. And it just reminded me, as God had reminded me to come back to Exodus 14:14, it just reminded me that there is no pursuit from the enemy. There is no spiritual warfare. There is no mental health. There is no mental illness that is coming so deeply after you that God cannot save you from. God is greater. God is sovereign, and God is going to get the glory out of your story. Do not give up. Keep waiting and trusting in the Lord. And I think sometimes stories like Exodus 14 can come to us and we can just think back of like, wow, like the Red Sea was parted and they were able to walk on dry land. But when you go back to the story and just rereading it, even just now, it's making me emotional because it said that they were terrified. It said that the Israelites cried out to the Lord. And it was great that Moses was able to be that leader servant of God, and he was obedient in that role and in that position because that's necessary. But even in verse 14, to verse 15, it was obviously like in that time, Moses must have been crying out to God, like, okay, God, like now you told me to lead these people. I can just imagine, obviously it's not in the Bible, but I can just imagine like he's probably like, okay, like where are you? What's gonna happen? Like they're chasing us. Do you not see? They're coming after us. So, let's make something happen here. And I love the fact that I wish that it had been put in there, but I love the fact that God's response is like, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. That means just move forward. Like, keep going. And I think that just solidifies even my first point from chapter or from verse 4. God is in control. You don't need to worry. You don't need to fret. And even like Moses told them, stand firm and you will see deliverance. The Lord, you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you and you need only to be still. And that was originally the verse that brought me here, because in the middle of the night, that's what God told me. He said, I will fight for you. You need only to be still. And I don't think that this stillness is just a matter of like, idly waiting. I think it's really like activating that faith and having that hope, having trust in God, and being settled in the peace of knowing who you really serve and who's really on your side. And I think if we don't know that he is really sovereign, that he's really in control, that he is really Lord over Lord, Lord of lords, God of all gods, reigning supreme over everything, creator of this earth, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. If you don't know that, if you don't believe that, like truly in your heart, we can be swayed. We can be misunderstanding what the season is really about. We can even think that God is against us or blame him for the things that are going wrong. And that is why I really think this message today is about understanding that God is on your side. And even if this time may hurt and it may feel, you may feel fearful like they did, they felt terrified, that's okay. There's purpose for this too. And you can feel the feelings and still trust. You can feel the feelings and still trust. I think the difference between the Israelites and then Moses was, well, obviously Moses was, God's servant. So he was a little closer, but also like he was a little closer. So in this time of waiting, if you do have these feelings, if you do get dissuaded into discouragement or just feel the anxiety overcoming you, then you need to get closer to God. You need to open up your Bible. You need to get in his presence, get in that secret place, turn on some worship music, worship him, thank him, remind yourself of all the times that he's got you through, and that this will just be another story of that. Just remembering the nature and the character and the goodness of God and thanking him for that and believing that with your whole heart and trusting him before all of this, before anything going on around you. Because unfortunately, in this life, we will face persecution. And I think a part of that persecution, just like the Pharaoh and the Egyptians pursued after the Israelites, will be that pursuant energy. And it may be from a coworker, it may be from, family, it may be from, I don't know, but I know that the enemy does have a way of using people just like God does, and having them be in your presence or be in your energy, and it just feels like it's draining you. It feels like a pursuit. It feels like it's chasing after you. But, God's goodness is also chasing after us. And if you really are a child of God and you really do believe in God, I truly do believe that God will use your enemies as your footstool. And even though I'm sure the Israelites in this very moment didn't think of it like that, one thing about a footstool is it can be used to get you a little higher. right? You can't reach that top shelf. Well, go get your footstool so you can. So they really did set up the perfect, he set up, God orchestrated the perfect scenario to where Pharaoh and the Egyptians, in their disobedience to the many warnings that Moses told him preceding the story, he was able to use that hardness of his heart to be able to get the glory out of this. And I think that that's really what we need to keep our eyes fixed on and remembering. I'm going to draw back to my notes because that was totally not in my notes at all. Yes, I did say that. Like when God told, when Moses, well, no, because it said the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." Like keep moving forward, because he was going to work a miracle. And the miracle, like think about this. This is not just something that was relevant to their days or, God parted the Red Sea. We still talk about that to this very day. God is still getting the glory out of this story to this very day. So how miraculous, how big is it going to be? Like how miraculous is it going to be? And that's why I want to call this message, "You are not a victim, you are a threat." Because even though it may just look like, oh, people just being petty, or oh, having to overcome another person with another attitude or another weird personality and all these things, because yeah, Pharaoh was a little, yeah, that was a weird personality. He was very dual minded in his nature, like double minded. One minute he was like go, and then the next minute he's like stay, and then like just very unstable. And it was reminding me of Saul a little bit, Saul with David and Samuel. But don't focus on that. I really feel like God's saying don't focus on that. Don't focus on the characteristics of people and how double minded they are and whatnot. Like they're held captive by their wickedness in this moment anyway. All we can do is pray for them and pray that they can get out of that, prison and really be set free through the help of Christ. But in this moment, you need to just stay focused on God, stay focused on moving forward and obedient to the call that He's already, told you to do. And just also remember, like I said, relevant to the message. As I keep getting off of what I've intended to come on here and speak about, but it's a miracle that we still talk about today. God parting the Red Sea for the Israelites is something that we still talk about to this very day. And so, whatever you're going through, whatever you're facing, that is this big, that you're needing to stand firm, but you feel like these intrusive thoughts keep coming after you. You keep feeling like this type of person keeps coming after you. Can't get away from this type of person that is just not conducive to your life. Just understand. This is a story that we still tell our children to this day. To this day. That means you're breaking curses. You're creating new covenantal relationships. Like this is greater than just about being about you or being about what you need in this season. This is about breaking something bigger than what we can see. And just like we can put up a fight in the natural, the enemy is not gonna let this go easy. And it may be scary. It may be scary. You may be terrified to even just try something new, just like the Israelites. They were terrified and they were getting out of oppression. And they were feeling like, I don't even know what to expect. I don't know if this is gonna work. But just hold on. Stand firm. I'm sure they were literally like, like in the movies when they're literally like at the window and there's no other escape and the thing is chasing after you and they're like, where else do we go? Is there another exit, God? Are you going to create a magic portal door? Like they're probably like, what is going to happen? And you may be feeling the same way. And that's why I just really want to encourage you to wait, be obedient, and wait like with thanks in your heart. Wait with expectant hope of a future, of a door opening, if that's what you have to believe. But just wait knowing who you serve. Wait knowing that God is God and he is not doing anything in vain. This is all to go towards the glory of his story. And he may be using you, he may be using the season, he may be using your enemies, but this is not to make you, to persecute you from God. This is not anything that's also bigger than you. There's nothing that's chasing you that is bigger than God. There's nothing that's chasing you that is more in control of the situation than God is. And so believe that and trust in him and trust that he will deliver you and that he will use this story for his glory. And you are being used as a vessel to even get curses broken off of your life. I really love that. I really love this story. I think it's like a full circle type of story, where just like in a chapter, you really see the full sovereignty. That's just the word that just keeps coming around in my head, like the sovereignty, of God. And I did make a note about verse 25. He jammed the wheels of the chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. And I did actually make note of that because even your enemies will now recognize the power of God, which for those that you are hoping for the salvation of people that may be used close to you by the enemy, that can be something that will change their heart, that can radically change lineages and generations. And I don't want to get too deep into this message because I don't know if this is for someone or just relevant to what's going on in my life, but I will say that God is very intentional, and sometimes we have to ask him for a perspective change. And the reason why I say this is because while obviously the Israelites was looking at it from the point of view of being scared and crying out and formerly being oppressed, I know that it may look like you are depressed and you are anxious, or you haven't ever won something this big or faced a giant this large, but just ask for perspective change, because when you look at this story, like full circle, you really look at this story, not only is it something that is now with this same lineage, with believers, with Christ believers to this day, as a testament to God's faithfulness, as a testament to God's sovereignty, but it is also something that spoke to the enemies that were pursuing them and letting them know who God is. Like in those days, that was not, like God was not who he is today, like as we know it through Christianity and being a believer. So for them to recognize God as Lord, that's huge. That's huge. And for all the other Egyptians to have seen that, that's huge. We don't know how that impacted them. I'm just thinking like holistically. I don't know how that impacted even the other Egyptians who were probably standing on the shore, like looking, waiting to see what was going to happen. What did that do for them? We don't know. I don't know. I can't say. But I can say, like, God is so intentional, just to use this moment. I'm sure they were scared out of their minds, the Israelites, thinking, like, if they find us, But just look at how faithful he was. So be obedient, keep waiting, and have faith. It will turn around. Your situation will turn around. And God is faithful, and he's sovereign, and he won't leave you nor forsake you. All right, that's all for this message. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.